Have you ever noticed something quietly unsettling? You tell yourself to relax, but the mind keeps talking. You tell yourself not to worry, but worry stays. And at some point, very gently, a question appears. If I am in charge of my life, why does my own mind feel so difficult to lead? This is not a personal failure, and it is not a lack of discipline. It is something deeply human. Welcome. This space is called Son.Mindfulness, a quiet place for reflection, inspired by Buddhist wisdom and lived experience. What you are about to hear is not a lecture. It is not a promise of quick peace, and it is not another attempt to fix yourself. It is a shared reflection, a reflection on why the mind wanders, why it seeks stimulation, why it holds on to fear, and why, even when life seems stable on the outside, the inside can still feel restless. Drawing gently from Buddhist psychology and simple insights from modern science, we will explore something subtle but essential. That peace does not come from controlling the mind, but from seeing it clearly. There is nothing here you need to believe, nothing you need to force. You are simply invited to listen and notice what resonates with your own experience. If you have lived long enough to know that pushing harder does not bring lasting calm, this reflection may feel familiar. Let us begin slowly. There is nowhere to rush. Part 1. The Quiet Shock. You are not in control of your mind. Let me begin with a gentle question. Have you ever noticed that the mind rarely asks for your permission? You wake up in the morning, and before your feet touch the floor, a thought is already there. A memory from years ago, a worry about today, a quiet fear about tomorrow. You did not invite it, yet it arrived. Many of us grow up believing, this is my life. I am the one steering it. And on the surface, that feels true. We choose what to eat, where to live, what work to do. We make plans, we make promises. We tell ourselves, I will be calm today. I will not worry so much. I will focus. But then, the mind does something else. You sit down to rest, and suddenly an old argument replays itself in perfect detail. You lie down to sleep, and the future begins knocking at your chest. You promise yourself not to be angry anymore, and yet anger rises before you even notice it forming. Have you ever felt that quiet confusion? A man once shared with me something very honest. He said, I feel like I'm driving a car, but the steering wheel is loose. Sometimes the car listens to me, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe you felt that too. Here's the uncomfortable truth. And it is the first shock on this path. You do not choose most of your thoughts, they choose you. What chooses them? Your memories do, your fears do, your habits do. A smell passes by, and suddenly you are 20 years younger. A sound, a word, a tone of voice, and your body tightens before your mind can explain why. This is not weakness, this is conditioning. In Buddhist psychology, this is called mental formations. Movements of the mind shaped by the past. Not good, not bad, simply accumulated. The Buddha never said the mind was evil. He said it was untrained. And an untrained mind does not serve, it leads. Let me ask you something gently. If the mind were truly under your command, wouldn't peace be simple? You would just say, stop worrying, and worry would stop. You would say, be calm, and calm would arrive like a loyal friend. But that is not how it works, is it? Instead, the more we order the mind around, the more it resists. The more we fight it, the louder it becomes. This is why so many sincere people feel tired on the inside. They are not lazy. They are exhausted from fighting their own thoughts. Science, in its own language, confirms this. The brain is designed to protect, not to make us peaceful. It scans for danger, replays threats, and holds tightly to what once hurt us, even when it no longer serves us. From the brain's perspective, worry feels useful. From the heart's perspective, it feels heavy. And here's where the Buddha's insight becomes very compassionate. He did not say, control the mind by force. He said, see the mind clearly. There is a great difference. When you believe every thought is you suffer with it. When you begin to see thoughts as movements, conditioned, temporary, something softens. I want you to imagine this. You are sitting by a river. Leaves float by on the surface. Some are bright, some are dark. You do not jump into the river to stop each leaf. You simply notice them passing. Thoughts are like that. But most of us are not sitting by the river. We are inside it, trying to control the current. This is the illusion we begin with. I am in charge of my mind. And this illusion quietly creates shame. Because when the mind wanders, we blame ourselves. When fear returns, we feel like we have failed. When old habits come back, we feel weak. But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if the problem is not that you are failing, but that you were never taught how the mind actually works? The Buddha called this condition a mind without an owner. Not because you are lost, but because the mind moves according to causes, not commands. This understanding is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to free you from unnecessary struggle. Because when you stop trying to dominate the mind, you can begin to relate to it wisely. This is where real transformation starts. Not with force, not with pressure, but with seeing. So before we talk about focus, before we talk about calm, before we talk about change, we must first face this simple, honest question. If the mind truly listened to you, why has worry stayed so long, even after you asked it to leave? I leave that question with you today. Part 2. How the Buddha looked at the mind, not control, but seeing. In part 1, we touched something uncomfortable but honest. The mind doesn't always listen. Now in part 2, I want to take you a little deeper, not into theory, not into complicated words, but into a way of seeing that the Buddha offered, and that can quietly change the whole relationship you have with your inner world. Because the Buddha did not teach people to fight the mind. He did not teach people to dominate it. He taught something far more subtle and far more powerful. He taught us to see. And when you truly see something clearly, you don't have to wrestle with it the way you used to. Let me ask you a question that might sound simple, but it's one of the most important questions in Buddhist psychology. When a thought appears in your mind, who is the one that knows it is there? Have you ever noticed that? A thought appears, and almost immediately, something in you is aware of it. A worry appears, and something knows, worry is here. Sadness rises, and something knows, sadness is here. That something is not the thought, it is the knowing of the thought. This is why Buddhism begins with a radical shift. The mind is not you. Now, please don't misunderstand. The Buddha wasn't saying the mind is your enemy. He was saying, do not confuse the mind with the self. Because when you confuse them, you suffer in a very specific way. A thought comes and you say, this is me. A feeling comes and you say, this is who I am. A wave of fear comes and you say, I am broken. But the Buddha would gently say, no, my friend, that is a movement in the mind. That is not your identity. So let's slow down and say it clearly, almost like a meditation. The mind is not you. The thought is not you. The emotion is not you. You experience them, you host them, but you are not the same as them. A woman I once spoke with, a very sincere Buddhist in her 60s, told me something that stayed in my heart. She said, I used to believe every thought was a message, like my mind was telling the truth. Now I realize my mind is often just talking. Isn't that a relief? Because some thoughts are not wisdom. Some thoughts are just habit. Some thoughts are the echo of old pain. Some thoughts are the mind trying to protect you, even when protection is no longer needed. And the Buddha's invitation is this: stop taking every thought personally. Now, to make this practical, the tradition offers a very helpful way to understand the mind in layers, like a lake. If you look at a lake from the surface, you might think it's calm, but underneath there can be currents, and deeper still there can be old sediment that gets stirred when the wind changes. In Buddhist psychology, we often speak of 3 levels, and I'll explain them in a simple, lived way. Pause. First, the coarse mind, the surface level. This is your everyday thinking, inner speech, planning, replaying conversations. It's the part of the mind that says, what should I do next? What did I say back then? What if something goes wrong? For many people, this layer never stops talking, and they assume that because it's loud, it must be important. But loud does not mean true. Second, the subtle mind, the emotional background. This is not always words. Often it's a mood, a tone inside you, a feeling in the chest, a heaviness, a restlessness, a quiet irritation. Sometimes you wake up and you can't explain it, but you feel it. You're not thinking anything terrible, but something underneath feels uneasy. That's the subtle layer. And here's what's important. Many people try to fix the coarse mind with logic, but the subtle mind is not impressed by logic. You can tell yourself everything is fine, and still feel unsettled. That's why Buddhist practice does not only work with thoughts, it also works with the body, the breath, the heart. Third, the conditioned mind, what the Buddha might call formations, tendencies, sankharas. This is the deep habit energy of the mind. This is where your patterns live. The pattern to worry, the pattern to criticize yourself, the pattern to seek approval, the pattern to run away from discomfort. And here is the humbling part. You didn't choose many of these patterns. They were learned, they were repeated, they were reinforced, sometimes in childhood, sometimes through trauma, sometimes through culture, sometimes simply through years of doing the same thing again and again. So when people say just think positive, it sounds nice, but it often fails. Because you're not only dealing with a thought, you're dealing with a deep groove. Now, I want to share a gentle but powerful insight. When you understand these layers, you stop blaming yourself, and you start practicing wisely. Instead of saying, why am I like this? You begin to say, this is a conditioned movement. That one sentence can bring so much peace. And this is where I want to offer you a line. Maybe the most practical golden sentence of this entire teaching. You do not need to defeat your mind. You only need to stop taking its side. Let that land, because most suffering is not caused by thoughts appearing. Thoughts appear in every mind. Suffering happens when a thought appears, and you join it. A fearful thought appears, and you become its ally. An angry story appears, and you start building evidence for it. A regret appears, and you begin to punish yourself with it. That's taking the mind's side. But Buddhist practice is different. It teaches you to step back 1 inch, just 1 inch, and say, thinking is happening. Fear is here. Anger is here. Not I am fear, not I am anger. Just this is present. That small shift is not passive, it is the beginning of freedom, because when you don't immediately stand with the mind, you create space. And in that space, something beautiful begins to grow. Clarity, choice, and a quiet kind of focus that is not forced. So before we go into the practical methods in the next part, I want to ask you something personal. When a difficult thought appears, do you notice how quickly you believe it? And what would change in your life if, just for today, you treated thoughts like weather, passing through, not defining you? I leave that question with you today. Part 3. Why the mind keeps wandering, pleasure, safety, and the hunger we forget. By now, you may be wondering something very human. If the mind is not me, and if I don't need to fight it, then why does it keep pulling me away again and again? Away from stillness, away from presence, away from what truly matters. This question takes us to a deeper meeting point, where Buddhist psychology and modern neuroscience quietly shake hands. And to begin, let me say this gently. Your distracted mind is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was trained to do. The Buddha used a simple image to describe this long ago. He called it the monkey mind. A monkey does not sit still for long. It jumps from branch to branch, grabbing one thing then another. Not because it is bad, but because it is restless, alert, always scanning. In the same way, the mind jumps from thought to thought, from memory to memory, from screen to screen. And in our modern world, the branches are endless. Let me ask you something. Have you ever picked up your phone to check one thing, and 10 minutes later, you don't even remember what that one thing was? You scroll, you click, you watch, you read, and somehow when you put the phone down, you feel more tired than before. This is not an accident. The brain is wired to seek pleasure, not deep happiness, but quick reward. In neuroscience, this reward system is often explained through a chemical messenger called dopamine. You don't need to remember the name, only the feeling. It's the small spark you feel when something is new. A notification, a message, a like, a headline. The brain says, this might be important, don't miss it. So you look, and every time you look, the habit grows a little stronger. Now here's the subtle part. The brain doesn't care if the pleasure is meaningful. It only cares that it is immediate. So the brain keeps pulling the mind outward. But the Buddhist understanding adds another layer. While the brain seeks pleasure, the heart, or what Buddhism calls the mind of feeling, seeks safety. We don't just want stimulation. We want reassurance. We want to know, am I okay? Am I still needed? Am I falling behind? Am I being left out? This is why comparison is so powerful. You see someone else's life, filtered, polished, and something tightens inside. Not because you are greedy, but because the mind is afraid. Afraid of missing something, afraid of being forgotten, afraid of losing ground. And here's where the Buddha's teaching becomes incredibly precise. He described a chain, not as a belief but as an observation of how suffering grows. It begins with desire, I want. Then comes clinging, I need to hold on to this. Then comes becoming, this is who I am now. In traditional language, craving leads to grasping, grasping leads to becoming. In modern language, it might sound like this. I like this feeling. I don't want to lose it. If I lose it, something is wrong with me. And so the mind keeps moving, scrolling, comparing, planning, worrying, not because it enjoys chaos, but because it believes movement equals survival. A friend of mine once said something very honest. He told me, when I'm busy, I feel important. When I stop, I feel exposed. That sentence holds a lot of truth. Stillness can feel unsafe to an untrained mind. Silence can feel threatening, because when things slow down, old feelings surface. Regret, loneliness, grief. So the mind learns a strategy. Stay occupied, stay distracted, don't look too closely, and society rewards this. We praise productivity, we praise busyness, we praise being on top of things. But rarely do we ask, at what cost? Here's the quiet tragedy. While the brain is being fed stimulation and the heart is seeking safety, wisdom is being starved. Wisdom grows in slowness, in reflection, in silence. But silence doesn't shout, it doesn't buzz, it doesn't flash, so it gets overlooked. Many people think the opposite of distraction is concentration. But in Buddhist psychology, that's not quite true. The opposite of distraction is understanding. When you understand why the mind moves, you don't hate it anymore. You stop saying what's wrong with me and begin to say, this is how conditioning works. That change alone brings relief. Let me give you a very simple example. Imagine a child who has learned that crying gets attention. Every time they cry, someone comes. Over time, crying becomes automatic. We don't blame the child. We understand the pattern. The adult mind is not so different. It learned that stimulation eases discomfort. It learned that comparison gives a sense of place. It learned that noise keeps pain away, so it repeats again and again. And here's where many sincere people get stuck. They try to force focus. They scold themselves for being distracted. They call themselves weak or undisciplined. But discipline without understanding becomes harsh, and harshness never leads to peace. The Buddha's path is gentler and more realistic. He would say, first, see the movement. Then don't feed it. Not with anger, not with judgment, just with awareness. When you notice the urge to check the phone, notice it. When you feel the pull to compare, notice it. When restlessness rises, notice it. That moment of noticing is already wisdom waking up. Because the moment you see the urge, you are no longer fully inside it. And something extraordinary happens. The mind begins to slow, not because it is forced, but because it is understood. This is why monks can sit in silence. Not because they have stronger wills, but because they have stopped believing every impulse. And you don't need to become a monk to practice this. You only need honesty. So let me ask you quietly, when your mind jumps from one thing to another, is it really because you are careless? Or is it because somewhere inside the mind is looking for pleasure, the heart is looking for safety, and wisdom is waiting patiently to be invited back in? I leave that reflection with you today. Part 4. 5 practices seen through wisdom rather than control. Now that we have looked deeply at how the mind moves and why it wanders, we arrive at a very important turning point. This is where many teachings go wrong. They say, now that you understand the problem, here are the techniques to control the mind. But the Buddha never taught control in that way. Because control still assumes an enemy. Control still assumes force. Control still creates tension inside. What the Buddha taught was something much quieter. Taming, observing, befriending, not breaking the mind, but educating it. So when I share these 5 practices with you, please hear them differently than you may have heard similar advice before. These are not tools to dominate your inner life. They are ways of changing your relationship with it. Let us begin slowly. The first practice, the sacred quiet of the early morning. Many traditions speak of waking early. In Sanskrit, it is called Brahma Muhurta. The hour is just before sunrise. But let me be very clear. This practice is not about productivity. It is not about doing more, achieving more, or winning the day. It is about what has not yet touched the mind. Before sunrise, the world is quieter. The phone has not spoken yet. The news has not arrived. Other people's fears have not entered your living room. At that hour, the mind is closer to its natural state. I once asked an elderly practitioner why he still woke early even after retirement. He smiled and said, because at that hour my mind still belongs to me. That is a very honest answer. Later in the day, the mind is borrowed. Borrowed by noise, borrowed by obligation, borrowed by other people's urgency. But in the early morning, the mind has not yet been shaped by the world. You sit, you breathe, you do very little. And because you do very little, you begin to hear what is already there. This is not discipline, it is respect. Respect for the mind before it becomes crowded. So if you wake early even for a few minutes, don't rush to use the time. Just be with the untouched mind. That alone is a powerful beginning. I leave you with this question. What would change in your life if you met your own mind before the world did? The second practice, breathing as recognition, not repair. Many people come to the breath because they want to calm down. That's understandable, but in Buddhist practice, breathing is not primarily a tool to fix emotions. It is a way to recognize them. When anger appears, the breath changes. When fear appears, the breath shortens. When peace appears, the breath softens. The breath never lies. So when you sit with the breath, you are not trying to control it, you are listening to it. One man once told me, when I focus on my breathing, my anger doesn't disappear. And I said, good, now you can see it. That surprised him. Because the purpose is not to erase anger. The purpose is to see clearly. This tightness, this heat, this movement, this is not who I am. It is something passing through awareness. When you breathe and observe, something very important happens. You stop saying, I am angry, and begin saying, anger is present. That one sentence changes everything, because the moment anger is seen, it loses authority. Not because it is suppressed, but because it is understood. So when you breathe, don't ask the breath to calm you, ask it to tell you the truth. And let that truth be enough. The third practice, interrupting thought by moving the body. There are moments when the mind is too loud to reason with. You know this feeling. The thought loops, the story repeats, the argument replays, and the more you argue back, the stronger it becomes. At these moments, wisdom does not fight the mind directly. It changes the channel. In Buddhist understanding, mind and body are not separate. A movement in one creates a movement in the other. So instead of scolding the mind, stop thinking, you gently shift the body. You stand up, you walk, you drink water, you step outside. This is not avoidance. It is cutting the energy that feeds the pattern. A thought pattern is like a fire. If you keep adding fuel, attention, emotion, resistance, it burns. If you remove the fuel, it fades. Moving the body removes the fuel. This is not weakness, it is intelligence. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can say to your mind is not a word, but a step. So when a thought becomes overwhelming, don't ask, how do I think my way out of this? Ask instead, how can I move wisely right now? That shift alone can save you much suffering. The fourth practice, meditation as watching change. Many people think meditation means emptying the mind, and when they cannot empty it, they believe they are failing. But meditation, as the Buddha taught it, is not about emptiness, it is about impermanence. You sit, thoughts arise, thoughts fade, feelings appear, feelings dissolve. You do nothing special, and slowly something becomes clear. Nothing stays. Not pain, not pleasure, not restlessness, not calm. Everything moves. This realization is not depressing. It is liberating. Because when you see that even the most difficult states pass, you stop panicking when they appear. You stop saying, this will last forever, and begin saying, this too is changing. That is wisdom in action. So when you meditate, don't aim for silence. Aim for seeing change without interference. Let the mind show you its nature, and trust that seeing is enough. I ask you gently, if every state passes on its own, what is there left to fight? The fifth practice, willpower as trust, not force. Finally, we come to willpower. Many people misunderstand this one. They think willpower means pushing harder, demanding more, being stricter. But real willpower is not about pressure. It is about trust. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, something inside weakens. Not because you are bad, but because the mind stops believing you. So the Buddha taught small commitments. Not heroic vows, not dramatic resolutions. Simple, honest promises you can keep. I will sit for 5 minutes. I will not speak harshly today. I will walk when anger rises. And when you keep that promise, something subtle heals. The mind begins to trust you again. And when the mind trusts you, it follows more willingly. This is not domination, it is relationship. So don't ask, how can I force myself to change? Ask instead, how can I become someone my own mind can trust? That question leads to a very different kind of strength. These 5 practices are not steps to mastery. They are gestures of respect. Respect for the mind as it is, respect for the heart as it learns, respect for wisdom as it grows slowly. And before we move to the final part, I want to leave you with this reflection. If you stop trying to control your mind and began listening to it with patience, what might it finally be ready to tell you? I leave that question with you today. Part 5. From Control to Freedom. When the mind finally rests. We have come a long way together. We began by seeing something honest, that the mind does not always listen. We learned to look at it without blame. We understood why it wanders, why it seeks pleasure, why it fears stillness, and we explored practices that do not force the mind, but gently educate it. Now, at the end of this journey, I want to leave you with something very simple. Not a technique, not a rule, not a promise of transformation, just a truth that reveals itself slowly when you are ready to see it. The day you stop trying to control the mind is the day the mind begins to rest. This may sound strange at first. After all, we have been taught our whole lives that peace comes from effort, from discipline, from improvement. We are told, try harder, be better, fix yourself. But the Buddha pointed in a different direction. He saw that much of our suffering comes not from the mind itself, but from our endless attempt to make it behave. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever tried to calm a frightened child by shouting, "Be calm"? It doesn't work. The child needs to feel seen, understood, safe. The mind is not so different. When we yell at it internally, stop thinking, "Why are you like this? You shouldn't feel this way." It tightens. But when we sit with it quietly and say, "I see you," something softens. This is not giving up. It is growing wiser. Many people confuse letting go with passivity. But letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop fighting what is already here. You still live your life, you still make choices, you still act with kindness and responsibility, but you no longer carry the extra burden of inner warfare. And here is something very important to understand, especially for those of us later in life. Freedom is not about becoming someone else. It is about no longer being trapped by what arises. Thoughts will still come, emotions will still visit, the world will still be uncertain, but you are no longer required to follow every thought. You are no longer required to obey every emotion. You can watch, and watching changes everything. A man once said to me in his 70s, "I don't need fewer thoughts, I just need more space around them." That is wisdom, and space does not come from control, it comes from understanding. The Buddha never promised that life would be easy. He promised that suffering could be understood, and therefore released. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gently, daily, quietly. This is why the path is not about becoming perfect, it is about becoming honest. Honest when the mind is restless. Honest when fear returns. Honest when old patterns visit again. Because every time you notice without judging, you weaken the habit of identification. And slowly, almost without you noticing, the mind learns to rest on its own. This is the kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. The kind that stays even when life changes. And life will change. The body changes. Relationships change. Roles fall away. If your peace depends on control, it will always feel fragile. But if your peace comes from seeing clearly, it becomes steady. This is especially important as we age. In the later chapters of life, we lose many things we once controlled. Schedules loosen, identities shift, certainties fade. And yet, something else becomes possible. A quieter joy, a deeper acceptance, a presence that does not need to prove itself. This is not decline, it is refinement. So I want to be very clear with you now. I am not here to promise that your life will change overnight. I am not here to tell you that all anxiety will disappear. I am not here to sell hope. I am here to offer something much more reliable. An invitation. An invitation to pause, to notice, to watch your own experience with kindness. When a thought appears, see it. When a feeling rises, feel it. When the mind wanders, gently return, not because you must, but because you can. And when you forget, and you will, simply begin again. No punishment, no disappointment, just return. This is the practice. This is the path. And before we part today, I want to leave you with one last reflection, not as an answer, but as a companion for your own quiet moments. If you stop trying to manage every thought, every emotion, every movement of the mind, what kind of peace might already be waiting underneath? I leave that question with you. May you meet your mind with patience. May you treat yourself with gentleness. And may you discover in your own time that freedom was never something to be achieved, only something to be noticed. Conclusion. As we come to the end, I want to thank you, not for watching, but for taking the time to be present. Nothing you heard today was meant to change who you are. There is nothing here you need to become. The Buddha never asked us to perfect the mind. He only asked us to understand it. And perhaps the most freeing realization is this: the day you stop trying to control the mind is the day the mind begins to rest. Thoughts will still come. Emotions will still move. Life will continue to change. But you no longer have to follow every thought. You no longer have to argue with every feeling. You can watch. And in watching, there is space. Space to breathe, space to respond, space to live with a little more ease. If you find value in this kind of quiet reflection, you are always welcome back here at Son.Mindfulness. Not as a habit, not as an obligation, but as a place to return to whenever you feel the need to slow down and listen inwardly. I leave you today with one gentle question. If you stop trying to manage every movement of the mind, what kind of peace might already be waiting beneath it? Thank you for sharing this quiet time with me. May you walk gently with your own mind.